So we begin. This is gate 31, sun transiting through gate 31 from July 24th to July 29th. We live in prisons of language with the doors to silence wide open. So I will unpack that, but to start us off, we're looking at the channel, the alpha, gate 31. That's right here. Going down to the 7 in the G center, activating a collective channel, which is known as the channel of the alpha. And 7 is no, 7 is leadership and 31 is influence. Together they create a leadership channel. The 7 comprises the archetype of the leader, the 31 the archetype of influence. Now in Ra's I Ching, he talks about gate 31, the gate of influence, as being a design of leadership, and that there's no other connotations to this. It's just a mechanic to be influential. And the lines is the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence. So he says that transference, he says influence is all about transference. So what has to be transferred needs to be transferred to those who have the power to act. So this he called the process of, the leader. And, depending on the line numbers to the type of leader, I think fourth line would be the abdicator, third line, the anarchist. I forget which line would be the Democrat, probably the fifth line. And so in essence, he described it as someone that's elected or selected. And it's about transferring a leadership quality onto others. And it's a pattern that gets transferred or not, or it doesn't get transferred. Especially, third line is more of a anarchist kind of leadership. And what kind of leadership is that? I have that actually. I have the 7-3. Kind of fun. And so that's what it is as far as how Ra describes it. Now, looking at it from a deeper lens, getting really into it, this is about a balance and expression between, I know it all, and so I'm the leader, so I control language, I disseminate the meanings of language. And ultimately, it's because language is the tool by which humans are controlled. When it's decided what our history is, what it looks like, how it reads in books, how it appears in TV shows and movies and university presentations, and history of all kinds, our technology, our science, our metaphysics, our mysticism, our spiritism, religionism, all those isms, how that appears, it's from a space of incredible certainty. It's we're presented our history as if it's precise, it's all in a book, it's all neatly configured, it's all accurate, it's all historically true. And as many of us know, that's just so far from the truth. I mean, if not mostly it's lies, all of it. And all of it attempts to be able to be a one-stop shop for truth, whether it's a religion or a science. I mean, what's the actual difference between religion and science? None. They're both egregores of control. They're both pendulums that attempt to dominate the individuated will of humans. So what I'm essentially getting at is we're all controlled by some kind of language system. And this has always been the case ever since there was language. I mean, I studied John Cerzan, so I'm really into primitivism, and its early precepts, of course, is that agriculture and language is what put us into the prisons that we're in. And of course, that makes sense because once you're in language, how can you get out of that? In essence, language is what the mind is composed of. Our heart is not composed of words. Our heart is expresses essences and feelings and breath. When we're in our heart, that's not something we're thinking. That's something we're moving through the heart space and we feel in the heart. We feel our heart all the time as our heart jumps and skips beats and calms and gets excited and races. And by overfueling the mind, we cause stress and anxiety to our heart and to our body. Thoughts build in the body and can cause disasters. So it's so important how we utilize our five senses and protect them. And so the contrast here with gate 31 is between this like huge arrogance of man thinking that he knows all. And then the contrast of that being a kind of humility of understanding that we know what we know and that's it. Because knowing is something that's more mystical. Knowing we know something. Well, how did you know that? Well, that's not something I need to explain, or I can explain, because it's a knowingness. It's in my being, it's in my body's intelligence. It's not the intellect. The intellect is the consequence of arrogance, and language is the consequence of arrogance. So on the other side of this, we have we have this deep, humble sense that language attempts to describe and contain knowingness, but it can't. And so it's the understanding here, the higher representation of the 31 is to understand that, well, the lower one, let's finish that, is, to understand that language is how we control. It's how humans are controlled. It's how leadership works. It's how things are controlled. We're told there's no files. And we all say, oh, okay, there's no files. And so we don't look for them anymore because then there's a new movie playing. And that was the old movie. Why are you bringing up the old movie? We're in a new movie now. Didn't you get the memo? Didn't you get the facts? It's a new show this week. And so then you realize that, we're not controlled by controllers. We're controlled by our own minds that utilize the language that's being communicated to keep our own minds stuck and imprisoned. It's like Morbid Angel said in one of their lyrics, the freedoms and the prisons are in the mind, secured limitations. So the endurance of words is the theme here. And so how is freedom gained? How can we break free to a higher level of expression in gate 31? Well, it's to understand on some level that it's when we escape language. We often, especially as, humans that are trying to get to higher levels of expression of truth, and we forget that, I mean, we're always constrained if we're still attempting to communicate our highest in language. At least if we're looking for some kind of ultimate sense of truth. Because we always are, because that's the form of communication that creates a bridge between us and others that are not with us in body. But even then, we still can express the body's intelligence. It's just, of course, easier in person. But we can hear it in the voice. You can see it in an expression. You can see the light in someone's eyes. You can see the face, the human face light up. So what I'm essentially getting at here is that the process is to realize that language is something that happens through us, and that there's a further reach for the intelligence of the body's expression, and that further reach is beyond language. And it's steps taken that are beyond the intellect into the intelligence of knowingness. As I've said in many other podcasts, you know, for example, belief systems, the bricks we attempt to build our houses of intelligence or intellect with, I mean, beliefs are, it's to be a lie, right? Belie. That's being a lie. A belief is something imposed, either self-imposed or otherwise. It's a construct that one has adapted. It's an active will. And really, there's only knowingness. We can't always explain that knowingness. It's just we know it or we don't. And so sometimes we have to be where we're at with ourselves and with others, and for others to be where they're at. And so another way of looking at this is because I've thought this before too. It's humility. Humility then is in not it's not in a conversation, it's not in a group meeting. It's not in humanity coming together and resolve and discussing, oh, what's the best way to move forward? The moving forward is already occurring through us because the consciousness of who we are moves through us. It's not something our mind can contain. It's not something the day can contain. Nature is moving through us, and nature moves through us with its process. Even when even when we're separated from it, thinking that we can, with our mind, control the natural world, and that our intellect can achieve control just because it can name things. And thus is the confusion that naming things is power over them. But this is not the case, because names are to some extent are arbitrary. Not really. I mean, the fact that we give things certain names arises from a deep essence of awareness of sound matching image. And that's just like a deep knowingness that I have of that. But when you study language deeply, you're like, so what is this? Just make up a sound and apply it to an image? But it's not so. As I'm expressing, there's always a deeper intelligence at work. And in that deeper intelligence, so humanity leads itself. And this reaches to higher truths, because with these different planes of perspective and perception, you reach these points where once you understand that the mind cannot contain the day, your mind cannot contain your life, your own, the own, the weight of your own moral condemnation and judgment upon yourself cannot lay weight on your life, on your heart. If anything, the true knowledge is just a lightness of being, of living with a light heart, and whatever guilt you've assigned to yourself, to be able to dissolve that and to just recognize that we as humans, we do the best we can. That's what we do. How can we qualify? Who are we comparing ourselves to? To what? We can't do anything other than what we do. There's also the talk of that our thoughts create our words create our actions, and our actions create our character. I'm generalizing a deep, really deep, profound quote, but in essence, that's what it is. That's what is lingering within you. Your process is what externalizes itself. There's really no contrast between the internal and the external. And this reaches a point, this expression of beingness reaches a point where, like I said in the last talk, especially it was on gate 56, another throat gate, and I was talking about how, at some point, the way that language expresses itself is not through the medium or perception of the intellect, but just something utilized through the body's intelligence, from any part of the body's intelligence, whether it's the splenic intuition, the emotional clarity, the sacral life force energy, the ego willpower, the G-center direction, or the mental channels. The intelligence of the body can incorporate the intellect in any way and utilize it for expression. And essentially, in its most simplistic expression, does it convey the highest frequencies of truth or balance, as I prefer? And so this is what it is. What I'm getting at with this title, We Live in Prisons of Language with the Doors to Silence Wide Open, is that, and as many of us like to have understood for so long, we struggle to express our words in a way that's adequate, that can represent the feelings and intuitions and senses and sensations inside of ourselves. Do we often succeed? The poets and the writers, we often think and feel that they get the closest to it, but they never arrive. Just like the scientists or the religionists, no one ever really arrives at a precise containment of the day. All of them are lost in tautologies, the serpent Ouroboros, the same thought feeding itself because it can't escape itself from the prison of language. And so only a circle, only a tautology can convey, with its tired cycles, can it come closest to conveying some essence of the depth of feeling that humans have and that we express to each other and that we feel. And so language thus becomes our highest expression and our most visible prison. But ultimately, silence speaks with a certain grandeur and speaks with great power. Because sometimes it's silence that really just conveys the answer. You might ask someone a question, and the silence might not answer. Or rather, sorry, the voice may not respond back with words, but in that silence, there's an answer. And such is where humans are sometimes, and such is conveyed sometimes the deepest forms of intimacy. I know that may sound backwards, but silence is something that is really important in how human beings convey resonance with each other, whether it's through gestures or a look or a shared tone or moment. It's like think about the songs that musicians create, and at the choice moments where there's that lingering space between the notes, the intervals, the intervallic dissonance between one note and another that's created in the space between the two. All right, that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. And I'll be back for the next Sun Gate transit after gate 31. I don't know yet what gate that will be, but we'll get there. Thanks so much. And feel free to subscribe and all the things. And have a great new moon.